Hello everyone, and a warm welcome to this 10 years celebration of the State of the Industry Report on Mobile Money. Now, I thought I would start off this session, this hour, with a short story from pre-COVID when I traveled to Tanzania quite frequently and saw the impact of mobile money firsthand. And I still remember vividly when I met Rubina, a lady who started as a sort of simple street vendor and selling things from the street. But once she got a hold of mobile money, once she got her phone and the cash that she managed to generate by selling things, her income started to grow, and she managed to save up to buy a shop. And we were standing outside of her shop at the corner there in Tanzania. And not only did she manage to sell to buy the shop, but she also put her three kids through school. Her mother stayed with her, and she afforded, of course, to buy good food and all that to them. So the power of mobile money is truly there. And this is just one of millions of such stories that I'm sure many of us are very familiar with. So it's with great pride that we launched this State of the Industry Report on Mobile Money. So over the past 10 years, mobile money has grown from a niche offering to a global financial services that is transforming lives of hundreds of millions of people around the world. Now I'm going to give you a couple of really amazing numbers. Today, there are 1.35 billion registered mobile money accounts around the world. 1.3 billion mobile money accounts. And in 2021 alone, there were $1 trillion worth of mobile money transactions through the system. Yes, 1 trillion, started with a T, of dollars through the mobile money system. Now, if you break that down, that's almost $2 million of transactions per minute, 60 minutes per hour, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Now, take a moment and think about that. That's absolutely incredible. $2 million per minute. But we have seen that mobile money is not just good business. It is really key to advancing the financial inclusion and achieving the SDGs at the same time. Today, millions of previously unbanked families like Rubina's have access to secure financial services which are transforming their lives. And we're going to talk about that and this much more in our session today. So now let me introduce our guests, and we have a lot of really exciting guests. I'm delighted that we will be starting this session with a pre-recorded message from Her Majesty Queen Maxima of the Netherlands. Now, she's also the UN Secretary General's Special Advocate for Inclusive Finance for Development. And joining us in person today, we also have Riccardo Puliti, who is the Vice President for Infrastructure at the World Bank. We have Greta Bull, Director of Women's Empowerment at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And we have Sitoyo Lopokoiyit, Managing Director of M-PESA Africa and Chief Financial Services Officer of Safaricom. And we have two of my colleagues. We have Max Cuvelier, who is Head of Mobile for Development here at the GSMA. And of course, we have Ashley Olsen Onyango, Head of Financial Inclusion and Agri-Tech at the GSMA. So let's start with our first guest. While she's not able to join us in person, Her Majesty the Queen Maxima of the Netherlands has recorded this very special message for us. So let's take a look.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to join you for the launch of the GSMA State of the Industry Report on Mobile Money 2022. Congratulations on the 10th anniversary of this important publication. Over the last decade, we have seen the transformative power of mobile money as a pathway to financial inclusion. Today, mobile money provides a means to transact for more than 500 million active users in almost 100 countries around the world. It has helped unlock access to financial services for many people underserved by the traditional banking industry. This includes the poor, women, smallholder farmers, and MSMEs. Yet, our work is far from over. Economies around the world are trying to build back from the COVID-19 pandemic. We must ensure that mobile money is used not only to transact, but to help everyone access the financial tools required to manage economic shocks, improve their financial health, and participate in an inclusive recovery. Services should be safe, affordable, and meet people's needs. They should go beyond payments to enable more access to products such as savings, credit, and insurance. A smallholder farmer could be helped if his mobile money provider would work with agricultural suppliers to make it easier to purchase products such as yield-enhancing seeds and fertilizers, or if partnerships could give access to affordable clean energy. This would allow him to increase his family income and build resilience to weather economic and climate shocks. Services should also be widely available, and connectivity should be made a priority. This will require investments in digital infrastructure, partnerships, enabling policies, and improved digital and financial literacy. While doing this, it is important that we continue to focus on closing the persistent gender gap in account ownership and bridging the digital divide. Likewise, we should continue to encourage active usage as well as uphold safety and trust in an evolving digital financial services ecosystem. In closing, once again, congratulations to the GSMA on this milestone. I look forward to the continued important contribution of the mobile money industry as we strive towards a more inclusive and resilient future. Thank you so much.
So thank you so much, Your Majesty, for that very important message. You know, the Queen mentioned how mobile money is being used to enable access to clean energy. And I think this is incredibly powerful example of the transformational power of mobile money within communities. One of my favorite examples has been the spread of pay-as-you-go solar home systems in off-grid areas. Now, these systems are providing millions of families with access to clean and affordable power for the first time. And that affordable power means that shopkeepers like Robina can keep her shop open for longer in the evenings. And nurses like Fortinet can keep her clinic running even when it gets dark. Now, this means that Fortinet can help more patients and in the process build a stronger, healthier, and more resilient community. Again, you see how powerful mobile money is in transforming not just lives, but whole communities. With that in mind, I would now like to hand over to our own Ashley Olsen Onyango, Head of Financial Inclusion and Agritech at the GSMA, to take us all through some of the highlights from this year's report. Now, Ashley, over to you.
Welcome, everyone, to this celebration of 10 years of the State of the Industry Report on Mobile Money. I'm really pleased to have the honor of sharing with you highlights from this year's report. We continue to track double-digit growth across all our key indicators, signaling sustained momentum and growth in the industry. As this was the 10th edition, in addition to looking at year-on-year growth, we also took a longer-term analysis of growth and trends of our key indicators over the past 10 years. And it's quite impressive what the industry has achieved. This year's report highlights the critical role that mobile money has and continues to play in expanding financial inclusion. The breadth and depth of mobile money deployments across and within markets has expanded. In 2012, there were 169 mobile money deployments in 71 countries. 10 years on, the number of live deployments has almost doubled to 316 and expanded to 98 countries worldwide. The number of active agents across these countries has grown more than 10 times, from 534,000 to 5.6 million. This represents the significant investment mobile money providers have made in increasing access to finance for the most underserved customers. The increased penetration and access points have enabled a tenfold growth in registered accounts, reaching 1.35 billion globally. With impressive uptake numbers, the mobile money industry reached a remarkable milestone last year. As Mats earlier mentioned, the industry processed more than $1 trillion in transactions. This is approximately 30% more than in 2020 and ahead of earlier predictions. In addition to growth in accounts and transactions, the industry has made great strides in diversifying its value proposition to consumers. Beyond person-to-person transfers and cash-in, cash-out transactions, the growth of partnership-driven ecosystem transactions, such as bill payments and international remittances, are accounting for a greater share of the global mobile money transaction mix. 3 statistics stood out at me. In the last 2 years, the value of transactions flowing between mobile and bank accounts has more than doubled, confirming the complementary relationship between banks and mobile money providers in the financial ecosystem. Second, the value of merchant payments nearly doubled in the last year, reaching an impressive $5.5 billion per month, driven in part by the effort of mobile money providers to develop more efficient onboarding processes for small and medium-sized merchants. And finally, nearly half of all outgoing mobile money transactions are now digital, made possible by a growing number of ecosystem players integrating with mobile money platforms to offer their customers a more efficient and affordable way to pay bills and make payments. Switching gears, I'm very proud that this year we have a full chapter in the State of the Industry report on gender. Despite significant gains in mobile-led financial inclusion over the last decade, women still have lower access and use of mobile money services compared to men. This is due to a variety of reasons, including lack of awareness of mobile money, not owning a mobile phone, and low literacy, digital, and financial skills. Our research into the mobile money user journey reveals wide-ranging gender gaps across 10 low and middle-income countries. In general, women are less likely to own a mobile money account. And while the gender gap in mobile money account ownership has narrowed to single digits in some countries, like Kenya, for example, where we are seeing progress towards closing this gap, currently at 7%, in many countries it is still near or more than 50%, reaching to 71% in Pakistan. On a more uplifting note, however, our research shows that once a woman has a mobile money account, her likelihood of using it is almost on par with that of a man. So while there is still more work to do, this is an encouraging insight and motivator to work together to close the mobile money account gender gap. The final section of our report offers insights on how mobile money is an enabler of many services across sectors that can help solve critical socioeconomic and environmental challenges, such as providing access to essential utilities, sustaining the livelihoods of smallholder farmers, and delivering rapid financial relief to vulnerable populations. For mobile money providers, these use cases represent valuable opportunities to diversify, which many have already embraced. Thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoy the rest of the program, and please do download the latest State of the Sector report to receive all of the rich information in this year's report. Back to you, Mats.
Well, thank you so much, Ashley. Some really, truly remarkable highlights in the report. So please download and read it. I can absolutely recommend that. Okay, so now let's continue the conversation with our next guest, which is Riccardo Puliti, Vice President for Infrastructure at the World Bank Group. You might know that the World Bank Group has 189 member countries and is a global partnership of 5 institutions working together for sustainable solutions that reduce poverty and build a shared prosperity in developing countries. So the work that the World Bank is doing is truly, truly important. And as VP for infrastructure, Ricardo leads the bank's global efforts to build effective infrastructure in developing and emerging markets, and also supports the World Bank Group's strategic priorities. Before Ricardo, he started in his position, he served as Regional Director for Infrastructure for Africa, overseeing the largest infrastructure programs in the World Bank. So I know he will have some really, really good and valuable insights for us today. Over the past 10 years, we have seen how mobile money has been a key driver of economics across low and middle income countries. So I would like to welcome Ricardo to talk a little bit more about mobile money's contribution to sustainable economic development and how it can be a powerful enabler for inclusive impacts. So welcome, Ricardo.
Mats, a big thank you. First of all, it's a pleasure to seeing you again after Barcelona. And as you know, here at the World Bank, we are very, very big supporter of GSMA. We think you do a great work. And by the way, I promise I will read the document, the report, because I think it is extremely interesting. And in my case, since my background is more energy and transport, I think it will be a very, very good thing to do. But going to our point. Mobile money is obviously a digital tool that can broaden access, expand services, and improve efficiencies in developing countries. Mobile money played a critical role in enabling the rapid expansion of financial inclusion in countries such as Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and India. In sub-Saharan Africa, the share of adults using mobile money grew by 80% between 2014 and 2017, compared to 13% for bank accounts. And I think that's a very important data. Mobile money contributed to over 50% of the total increase in financial inclusion in the region, not to mention the increase in terms of gender. Mobile money supports inclusion of citizens worldwide. Poor communities that were previously underbanked or even unbanked use mobile payments as an entry point to access formal credit, insurance, and savings. In Kenya, 2% of households were lifted out of poverty when families had access to mobile money over a long period of time. But it's not only a matter of households, it is also a matter of companies, of enterprises. Mobile money and digital financial services on mobile network support macro enterprises, small and medium enterprises, informal firms, and on account workers. So it is really the sinew of economic growth. Access to finance is a game changer for small businesses. Once micro enterprises can access credit and plan their future growth, this transcends the more than 400 million medium and small size enterprises in developing countries. These enterprises generate nearly half of all jobs and a fifth, 20%, of all employment. During the pandemic, small businesses with access to credit were much more resilient, maintaining their employment and output. Digital finance also provides access to credit and loans that help small businesses smooth out their savings and consumption patterns to build resilience to shocks and literally weather the storm during the hard times and invest in the good times to increase productivity. Mobile money platforms can leverage customers' telecommunications usage and top up data to extend emergency airtime loans to own account workers or informal firms that actually in sub-Saharan Africa are very much a big part of the total entrepreneurial base. New business models can also instill competition in the market, generate more benefits to users. In Senegal, for example, the local fintech called Wave grew to become a leading provider of mobile money services by leveraging a nimble business model and introducing a new, lower cost pricing structure for sending money and paying bills through a mobile wallet. The success of this app-based innovator has led incumbents in Senegal and other West African markets to adapt their pricing, resulting in a significant decrease in the cost of mobile money transactions and withdrawals. Mobile money also helps government to deliver services, and certainly we saw this during the recent pandemic, which is regrettably still going on. They helps government to deliver services more effectively and efficiently. During this time of pandemic, countries with higher rates of financial inclusion were able to leverage this infrastructure to rapidly roll out government support. At least 39 developing countries leveraged mobile money to deliver social assistance in response to COVID. Many countries, including Cameroon, Liberia, Mozambique, and Angola, adopted digital payment for social assistance programs for the first time in the pandemic response. Financial inclusion expanded notably during the crisis through digital payments. In Brazil, over 28 million new beneficiaries that were previously unbanked were incorporated into the social assistance payment system through a digital savings account. Certainly, the pandemic was a dark moment for everyone around the world, but digital financial services did help support resilience and inclusion and help make it through that tough time.
Well, that's very interesting, Ricardo. If I may ask you, I mean, we know how much good mobile money is doing, but we also know that from an MNO perspective, the major network operators, the mobile network operators, they need to find a commercial sustainability in the product. And we also know that the mobile money ecosystem is under threat, is under pressure, both from regulatory pressure, from other competitive areas, etc. What can government do to help the industry become more sustainable and continue to develop new products and provide services?
Listen, without any doubt, policymakers and the private sector alike, in my opinion, need to prioritize connectivity, affordability, identification, and safeguards, all of which are critical to enable uptake of mobile technology in developing countries. As we know, over 3 billion people live within reach of mobile broadband network, but do not use mobile internet. In Africa, the uptake gap is widening, with an increasing percentage of population covered by 3G mobile network not using the service. Much of it has to do with affordability. But it's funny because, as you know, I come from the energy sector, and you find exactly the same thing. It's a matter of connectivity, and it's a matter of affordability as well. And this is in our sector now. This is due in large part to affordability challenges. 4G enabled handsets can cost up to 6 times the average monthly income, which makes it very, very difficult to afford. So device affordability ranks as the primary barrier for uptake among men and women in Africa and Latin America, and the secondary barrier for both men and women in Asia. It is absolutely necessary, and actually I would like to tell you that we just produced a document for our governors called Digital and Development. So as soon as it will be discussed at the forthcoming spring meeting, we will immediately send the GSMA copies so that we can discuss it together. And there we very much push forward the point that government interventions to promote competition, reduce operational costs through better regulation, and target supports to vulnerable groups can drive down costs, boost uptake of mobile services and mobile payments. For example, we have a good collaboration with the governments in Senegal and Morocco to cover regulatory reforms and implementation in this area. And the role of the incumbent, of course, in this market is so important. Try to build that culture of transparency, openness, a predictability, and competition. Other barriers also hamper the uptake of connectivity, include the base digital literacy gap and a lack of user-friendly apps. In addition, lack of identification is another important obstacle to accessing mobile payments and digital financial services. There are an estimated 1 billion people globally who do not have an official identity document. The identification challenge in low-income countries and among vulnerable groups, and including women, refugees, and people with disabilities, is very, very high. Over 1.7 billion unbanked people are around the world. 1/5 or more, so around 330 million, say they don't have the documentation needed to open an account. For many people without an ID, even obtaining a SIM card can be difficult. There are now 157 countries where people need to provide a proof of identity to comply with mandatory SIM registration requirements. Tackling ID coverage gaps requires a concerted effort in tackling different barriers to inclusion and accessibility, legal, financial, administrative, all at once, ensuring that people can access basic identity documents free of charge and bringing registration close to people through mobile campaigns or expanding the network of ID offices. Allowing for flexibility in documentary requirements can also remove a significant barrier. Partnerships with civil society are also important to reach members of vulnerable groups and to ensure the registration processes are non-discriminatory. The World Bank and its Identification for Development ID4D initiative are currently supporting 49 countries in improving their civil registration and identification systems to make IDs more accessible and easier to use for people around the world. Once connectivity, affordability, and identification needs are met, another barrier to adoption is the trust agenda. Concerns related to privacy and cybersecurity are pervasive worldwide and result in uptake hesitation, especially in developing countries. While investing in digital development, countries must safeguard against cybersecurity risks by developing their legal and technical capacities, as well as creating awareness about the importance of privacy and consent to access personal data. 78% of financial supervisors across the globe listed cybersecurity among the top 3 growing risks related to fintech during the pandemic. Statistics also show that cybersecurity breaches increased by an average of 15% for fintech during the pandemic. Therefore, consumers need protection for cybercrime risks, digital literacy, and more robust frameworks and infrastructure to combat cyber threats and cybercrimes, and effective rules on accountability and transparency regarding the use of algorithms, as well as rules on personal and non-personal data protection, are absolutely needed. At the World Bank, we are working, and I think it will happen very soon, where all the projects of the World Bank will have a part on cybersecurity, because we realize how big is the delay. So I will stop here, but as you can see, a lot of work from a lot of cooperation from institutions like yours, from multilateral financiers, private companies, and government, in order really to make sure that inclusion, affordability, transparency in terms of competition are not just words, but they really are going to happen. And it is not always easy, I have to say, in my experience.
But Ricardo, thank you so much. I think that was a very insightful answer. and I think you painted the picture that it's not easy, it is complicated, and it's truly one of those areas where private-public partnership is a must. And we working from GSMA in a fantastic partnership with the World Bank, I think is a great starting point. But affordability, as you said, is just one barrier. You have skills that we're working with other partners. So you have local content, you have the trust factor, cybersecurity. So there is a sort of a pamphlet of areas that we need to address, and working together hand in hand, shoulder by shoulder, is the only way of tackling this. So Ricardo, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure as always, and hope to see you soon again in person. Thank you.
Hope to see you again, and I would like to reiterate how important is the is the work that we do together with GSMA.
Yeah.
This is really important, and even I, little by little, will become fluent and will be more helpful.
You are already fluent, Ricardo.
Okay.
Thank you so much. All right, thank you. Bye bye. Bye. So that was really exciting. I think. Now over to our next panel that will be chaired by Max Cuvelier, our own head of M4D Mobile for Development within GSMA. So Max, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mats and Ricardo. Very interesting perspectives as usual, and I actually have the best people joining me to continue this conversation right now. So I'd like to welcome both Greta and Sitoyo. I would say to a lot of you, I'm sure they don't need an introduction, but still, Greta was until very recently the CEO of CGAP and is now the Director of Women's Economic Empowerment at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And Sitoyo is the Managing Director of M-PESA Africa and Chief Officer for Financial Services at Safaricom. And I'm pretty sure that even if you know very little about mobile money, Safaricom's M-PESA success story is one you'll definitely have heard of. So actually, I think it's probably the right place to start this conversation. So M-PESA just turned 15, if I'm not mistaken, and it's really provided a blueprint for many actors to deliver financial services to the M-Bank, and it's become kind of the benchmark of the industry. In other words, I would say that every mobile money service wants to become M-PESA when they grow up. So turning to you, Sitoyo, what would you say has been the key success factor, or maybe the key success factors behind M-PESA?
Thanks, Max, and it's great to be here. It's nice seeing Greta. I think for us, it's always been, we're a purpose-led organization. We strongly believe in transforming lives. It's been our ethos since Safaricom was formed, and in 2007, M-PESA, when it was launched, we turned 15 early this month. The ethos is still there. We really look at products and services that make an impact in the society. I strongly believe the society is successful, that will be successful. And it's purpose, people, and we always say the profit is a byproduct of what we do. And we've focused, on innovating around solving the needs of customers and businesses. We've strongly built an ecosystem. So I keep saying there's no product called M-PESA. It's a brand, but it's a massive, massive ecosystem. Today it has 2.6 million businesses running on M-PESA, from government to SME, large corporates to SMEs to micro SMEs. That's a side of the business that is hardly talked about, and it's great to see the presentation, on merchant payments. But I think the business side, and especially during COVID, has been one of the stars in it. And it's actually, to be honest, I see the business side much more successful than even the customer side of it in what we see across our footprint. So I think that ecosystem and building it is really important. The agent network is still a key component because cash is still, king, and ensuring that, the agents provide not only cash in, cash out services, but they provide more education services. We're beginning to look at the agent, how do we increase profitability of the agent? How many more products and services that can they provide in terms of it? I think the deep management commitment and the investment that actually comes that we put in is important. For us also, it's just how we operate in terms of execution, I think, and then encouraging the teams to try different things. The idea of outside a business case of millions of dollars, not business case, but roll out a product for millions of dollars without actually seeing a business case, because we actually thought it was the right thing to do. And it takes time. I see a lot of people wanting to make profit out of it, but I think it's if you stick with it, if you stick with focusing on ensuring the society that no one is left behind, that from women, I think we talked on them being left behind, and in terms of visually impaired people, we have overall it's looking at that and saying, how do you provide better products and services to customers?
Thank you very much. So I think everybody heard there's no one single key success factor. It's a lot of work, and it's obviously a very incredible journey of growth, of diversification, as you were saying, and of innovation. But I'd like to pick up on the last point that you made. Actually, we know that mobile money started with a very simple kind of USSD application. I'm using application in a very loose sense here, but it's evolving in a lot of markets into like apps and super apps in some cases. But we do know a lot of people still can't afford a smartphone. And you mentioned about inclusion. You started with the fact that you're a purpose-led organizations. I'd be interested to hear how you make sure that you don't leave anyone behind as you grow and diversify and complexify.
I think it's really important. Leaving no one behind covers different aspects of the ecosystem. One, I was talking about small businesses, micro SMEs were left behind. There are issues on women that we need to look at. There's the issue of access. I think that was talked about before. Of the network coverage in it. There's issues of devices, and the central bank governor, I was with him a few weeks back, and he says he wants a $5 smartphone. Then we start changing the way in which we can provide certain access. But I'll just give two examples. Yesterday, we're very fortunate to launch Halal Pesa. This is an Islamic banking product. We had never launched one before, fully digital. And this is a community where digital financial lending has really grown in our markets. It wasn't the right product for the Muslim community, and we've just rectified that. A few years back, we know there were 1.4 million visually impaired persons who use M-PESA. And so how do they get? They could feel the money, let's say 1,000 shillings, and give it to an agent or somebody. But those agents were actually probably, or some of them are giving them 100 shillings back. So they were losing huge, big time. So we partnered with the South Korean company, the Braille company, to build a Braille watch that's connected to a smartphone. And we've heavily subsidized that. We've introduced IVR into it. So that just gives an example of it. Kenya has refugees from South Sudan and Somalia. Then how they also need access to financial services, work, USAID, welfare program, to provide closed loop systems that help give dignity to refugees to be able to use money rather than just depend on what they're handed over. Another just example is in Kenya today, there's a drought, and we worked with USAID and the government of Kenya and WFP on the 2.5 million households that were facing starvation. And rather than take food to that, and that has a lot of issues in terms of distribution, transportation, loss, gratitude, even women exploitation using food is a big issue. And we've turned that around to cash transfers. But what you've seen in cash transfers initial stages is they get about $45, and that empowers them to buy the goods and services they require. But what has done it has people who produce foodstuffs have gone to that market now because people have money, and the economy is beginning to pick up, and food prices are actually cheaper than what probably the government would have had to buy. So these are just examples of ensuring that the different parts of the community that no one is left behind. COVID has been a big change in customer behavior, e-commerce, and so on and so forth. So access to also, different parts of our customers and businesses who want to now do things online, they can't travel. How do you provide that so that they're able to continue doing their businesses and so on? So that part has become, really key in what we've been trying to do. But just on the last one, I'll give an example is on businesses. So during COVID, when those remote payments, how does an SME continue serving customers? So I stopped launching the consumer super app and we launched the business super app first. And today, businesses can run, an entrepreneur can run their business on the app. And it's actually far much more successful than our consumer super app, because today over 40% of the business transactions are actually on the app, the business app. And now we're able to provide some products and services. And that's why that side of the business has grown to well over 450,000 merchants using the service from 175,000 merchants just the beginning 12 months ago.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's amazing to hear the stories of how you're using mobile money as a tool for gender inclusion, to help like refugees, or to improve like food security, or in those cases for economic continuity in the face of a global pandemic. I'm turning to you, Greta. You've been supporting the growth of mobile money as a way to unlock really financial inclusion for years now. And we've heard the numbers earlier from Ashley, 1.35 billion registered accounts, which is mind-blowing, but only 38% of those have been used in the last quarter, and actually only 26% of those have been used in the last month. So what does this mean for financial inclusion, for really realizing the potential of mobile money in terms of financial inclusion?
Yeah, thanks, Max. And congratulations to you for the 10th year anniversary of the State of the Industry Report. It's something I turn to every year. And congratulations to Sitoyo on 15 years of M-PESA. That makes me feel a little bit old. But to answer your question, I think it means you still have work to do, right? I think the industry's done an amazing job of building a big footprint and signing people up for accounts. There's just no doubt about it. The numbers are super impressive. But I was really struck in reading the report by the fact that usage rates on a 30-day basis have been pretty stubbornly stuck, right? So back in 2012, 20% of total accounts were active on a 30-day basis. And in this year's report, it was 25, 26%. So, what we really need to see is growth in active accounts outpacing growth in registered accounts. And while that figure suggests that this is happening, it's not happening at the kind of pace that we need to see. And so that suggests that the industry is good at signing people up, but still has work to do to get them to use the service regularly. And I think that's going to require attention to a few things. One is, continuing to build a compelling value proposition. I think Safaricom's always been out in the lead on this. But for the most part, Kiko and P2P are still the largest use cases. I was really happy to see in the report that we saw growth in circulating use cases like bill payments, merchant payments, and digital savings and credit. But the tough job, I think, is going to be to keep building those use cases into a fairly seamless ecosystem of services that just keeps people using mobile money. The high rates of people reporting that they don't use mobile money because they have better alternatives or prefer cash, I think still suggests that you have some work to do. But M-PESA's super app, I think, will be an interesting one to watch, as will additional services that are onboarded through open APIs, as MTN's example in your report. And CGAP worked with MTN on their open APIs back in the day. So happy to see that service doing well. But I think if you create a service that keeps people using the solution, they're more likely to be frequent users, right? So going to an agent for cash in, cash out is kind of the definition of friction. And yet agent-based transactions are still really at the heart of the value proposition, and that has to change over time. I think the second thing is ease of use, right? I spent years working on things like merchant payments and interoperability, and I was really happy to see big growth in merchant payments in this year's report, but that's still relatively small. And that, to me, is the big one, right? If you can shift people to habitual use of a payment service where they use it like I use my credit card daily, all the time, then you have a really completely different ballgame on usage. You'll have people using it every day or every other day. So I think that's kind of the holy grail and has been for a long time for the industry. But, one of the things that struck me about the report is when you guys were talking about interoperability, you were talking about bank to MNO. I think the real win-win is really MNO to MNO interoperability, because I shouldn't have to walk into a merchant and think about, well, do they take my, M-PESA wallet or do they take my MTN wallet? It has to be really seamless. And I think smartphones are also going to be really critical to the ease of use issue, right? But the take up of smartphones has been really slow in Africa. We keep talking about this. Every time I come to one of these things, we talk about smartphones. And so I think we need to think about how to make both handsets and data more affordable. Happily, I think there are people taking that up. We're seeing some PAYGO providers piling in and seeing a lot of really rapid growth in smartphone leasing. So I think there's going to be more and more on that. And then one last thing, I think, and Ricardo mentioned this as well, I think trust is still an issue, and you have to keep building confidence in the service, right? So, and I think that's particularly true with users like women in rural populations. So people need to understand the service is there. They need to understand how to use it and what the benefits are. And you know, the service needs to be more reliable, and consumer protection needs to be really front and center in all of these things. So 2 points that really struck me in recent years. One was a finding in the latest Kenya FinAccess data that system downtime was a serious problem for users. I was almost floored when I saw that almost 50% of users said that either lost money or fraud and system downtime were problems with mobile money. Happily, you did better than the banking industry. But you know, that's a big friction. That's why people default to cash, right? And I think the second is, you know, I think it's great that we've seen growth in digital credit. I think the industry does need to really actively own the issue of consumer protection in the digital credit space, because if people associate mobile money with high cost loans that lead to over indebtedness, then I think that starts creating barriers to usage in people's mind. And I think that's probably particularly true of women. So I think it's worth staying on top of both those issues. But, you know, I think you've built such an amazing base. The numbers are incredible. And now, you know, the next 10 years is just going to be building on that and deepening the service and deepening the engagement with consumers.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think as for Sitoyo's response, there's not just one element. And you mentioned like strengthening the value proposition, the super app, like keep working on merchant payments, interoperability, smartphone trust, security. I've only taken a few quick notes, but there's a lot there. And it's really, I mean, it's really about building an ecosystem. So you need to have every part of this ecosystem strong for people to just go from it being kind of a nice to have to a must have. And actually, I mean, the point here is not just about registering users, obviously, it's about keeping them active. And in commercial terms, that's what you call like stickiness. And Sitoyo, like, I'm sure this is something you pay very close attention to. How do you approach that? How do you approach making sure that people keep using and stay in the system and that their usage gets deeper and deeper?
No, thanks, Max. And I think Greta, you raised quite a few, you know, important points that we look at. I think one is as you develop relevant products and services. I think for it to be really, you know, to increase usage, this two-sided ecosystem must operate well. The merchant side, the business side, needs to be very strong. Need to provide products and services that grow into it. And then the consumer side, you continue adding products and services that address it. Just to give an example, you know, in Kenya today, we have 30 million, we crossed 30 million customers beginning of this month. We had 85%, you know, monthly active usage of the registered customer base, which is quite high compared to most markets. But what we've seen is the business side and customer to business payments. I saw in the report, you know, it was 5.5, I think. For us, we're seeing, and you'll be seeing us release some numbers, and it's in the region of $7 to $8 billion on a monthly basis being paid in Kenya alone. But what we've done is a velocity of funds in terms of we connected the businesses to be able to do the same type of payments that consumer does. So they can pay the bills, they can pay the rentals, they can do that, they can sell airtime, make a commission, and so on. So that just bills. So what you see now is businesses, especially after COVID, so the benefit of operating with digitally, either card or cup or M-PESA, that today a lot of restaurants don't accept cash. So the business community is actually driving, saying the efficiency, because I was speaking to one of the restaurants and they're saying they're more profitable now than before, even with less tables. So he understood that there's bill freight, then there's cash, then those change issues, then, you know, insurance costs, all that has disappeared. And he's like, whoa, I didn't know I was making this kind of money. So those use cases for it. And for us, I could say, for every 1 shilling that they pay us, a business should generate 5 shillings. So they should see us as an enabler onto it. And the super app comes in terms of opening up the platform. Today, on our Open API platform, we have 42,000 developers trying to do this. So 42,000 people trying to build solutions. So you need to open that ecosystem to develop relevant products and services that consumers can start sort of using. So despite even M-PESA's, you know, Kenya being very high, it's only used 12.5 days a month. So just imagine if it's done every month, M-PESA will be 3 times bigger than it is. But they only use 4.5 products. So if you say cash in, cash out, and lending and payment, but I've got a lot of products. So my target addressable market from days of usage, from number of products, is massive. The average is 18 transactions per month, which is, it's very high when you compare to others, but for me, the runway is still very massive in terms of the ability. I think even Kenya will be growing, double digit for the next 10 years or more. So I think that, but then to Greta's point, I think which came out in the FSD report on the FinAccess was system stability. Now in Kenya, we're doing 50 million transactions a day. I'm averaging 1,800 transactions per second. If I'm down for 1 minute, it becomes an issue because people are not using it. It's in the hospital, it's in fuel stations. People get stuck. And so we're moving from 4 nines to 5 nines. So 99.99 is not enough. We are moving to 99.999, which is 6 minutes of downtime a year. But that means a huge investment in the back system. And then to make sure it's secure, the cybersecurity issues that Ricardo spoke about, the fraud issues, the scams issues, the putting AI and so on, so that people feel safe when they're using these platforms. And I think, and data protection issues, the new data laws coming in, how do they feel that the information is safe? So I think, and then the marketing bit. You really need to spend a lot on marketing and really engaging with the consumer. So those are the things that I see will slowly by slowly, start increasing usage across the market.
Yeah, and it's the responsibility that comes with being so successful and so embedded everywhere. When people need their mobile money account to do so many things, you can't afford to let them down. Now we've been talking for about 15 minutes, and we've heard about gender quite a few times, and I've been holding back because, but we can't just talk about inclusion and financial inclusion, leaving no one behind, without talking specifically about gender. And Greta, both of us are known to be quite relentless when it comes to making sure the opportunities that are created out there reach men and women equally. And after all, you recently joined the Gates Foundation to focus on this specifically. So in the report, actually said we've got a full chapter on gender, and we've got very good stories coming out of Kenya, but also Ghana, of the gender gap being bridged. But there is a much longer list of countries where the financial gender gap is still there and is here to stay. From your perspective, what can we do about this?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's one I think we're going to have to really keep at, because that gender gap has stayed for years. I mean, we haven't been able to budget. So I think we all have to really get focused on trying to solve this. And I was thrilled to see it being such a big part of your report. And I really liked the way you presented it as a staged journey, from phone ownership to account awareness to having an account to active usage of that account. And literally in every one of those stages in the journey, there's a gap in almost every market. So I think we're going to have to look for solutions for every one of those steps, both onboarding and sort of helping women get comfortable with using the phone and the account. That said, I do think markets like Kenya and Ghana, where mobile money is pretty ubiquitous, might be instructive, right? Your report didn't produce stats on Ghana, but there was a lot in there about Kenya. And you can see that awareness of mobile money is statistically equal for women and men, but we know that women are less likely to own a phone. And if they own a phone, they're less likely to own a smartphone. And if you talk with companies like M-PESA, who are now selling smartphones and seeing huge uptick in the take up of those smartphones under pay-go contracts, they say they have a gender gap too, right? So there's something about social norms that are sort of saying, right, the first person who gets a smartphone in that family is the man. And I think a lot of women find that it's not salient. They don't sort of see what the point. They have to understand what the point is, right? So we're looking at doing some work with both GSMA and M-PESA to try to understand that better. So how do we get smartphones into women's hands? How do we help increase their comfort levels with using them? And how do we map those into income generation opportunities? Because the smartphone isn't something for just, checking your Facebook page. It's actually something that you can earn a livelihood on. And so I think, we want to sort of map out what that journey looks like and see if we can start closing that gap. But then we're going to have the same issue on usage, right? The other thing that really stuck out in the report is, with the exception in Kenya of women receiving money from a friend or relative where it was exactly equal, In every other case, there was like a 10 or 15 percentage point gap in usage for men and women once they had that smartphone, even in a market like Kenya. And so I think there's still work we need to do to help women see the value of using mobile money. And so that's a journey that's not just about getting smartphones in their hands, but it's about helping them understand how to use it effectively and for what, and making sure the value of those services are well understood. And I think all of the things Sitoyo was talking about in terms of deepening the ecosystem, providing different use cases, onboarding other providers who can develop their own apps, I think those are all going to make a difference. And we just have to figure out how to bridge that gap for women that, is involved in social norms, but also just comfort with using the tool. But I think we're poised to see a big change in that.
Yeah, I agree with you. We're seeing more and more people investing in that. And what we see as well is we talk to mobile operators, mobile money providers, and we've really managed to articulate in the past few years, and credit goes to our Connected Women team who's worked with dozens of them, the fact that it's not just the right thing to do, it's also the right thing to do for business. Great. I see the team is telling me we have 2 minutes left. So I'm going to turn to you, Sitoyo, and then Greta for like a 60-second answer to last couple of questions. So Sitoyo, you're about, I think in the coming days, to take M-PESA to a new market, and not the least one. Ethiopia, 120 million people, and that's been called in one of our previous reports as a sleeping giant of mobile money. So in 60 seconds, as you expand, what is your vision for M-PESA in the next 10 years?
I think for us is to drive to become the largest fintech and digital ecosystem in Africa, providing the two-sided ecosystem with relevant products and services, and continue to focus on empowering society. I think for us is also opening up our platform. So for example, we've built our ML platform and so on. We want to provide it to third parties such as fintechs and so on. So we secure the ecosystem. So you'll be seeing us opening up a lot more technology to enable the fintechs and to enable the financial institutions, transaction monitoring and so on for the industry. So you'll see us play a bigger role in helping the industry in Africa grow. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a compelling vision, and I don't see how it wouldn't take you to the next level. Now, Greta, for the last question, what would you say we need to focus on if we want to achieve financial inclusion and financial health for all? And I mean by all, I mean both men and women in the next 10 years.
Yeah. Well, I think people don't use services unless they see value in them, right? And people use financial services if the right service is available to them when they need it. I think we've got a long way along that pathway, but there's more that we need to do. Right now, people have to work too hard to use financial services, so cash is a better alternative. This industry has done an absolutely brilliant job in making services available to people, but I think now you need to do more to increase usage by making those services more salient. People have to see that the service delivers real value in their lives. And as I said before, that gets achieved through a deeper product mix, a better user experience, which hopefully smartphones will play a role in helping to deliver. Seamless service delivery, and that's going to require greater interoperability as well as the use cases, the diversity of use cases that open APIs can help create. And then, to get at the issues related to financial health, you need to make sure you're building safeguards into the products that help protect customers, particularly as credit continues to take off. Just one other thing, I think, as we focus on reducing that usage gap and continuing to build a better user experience that makes these services a better alternative to cash, we have got to focus on creating greater reach among women. There's, as you said, Max, there's value in making that effort. As was pointed out in your own Connected Women report that came out from last year, closing the gender gap could produce significant revenue uplift, up to 37% in Africa and up to 54% in Asia. So this is a prize worth pursuing, and I hope that we will see that gender gap close in the very near future. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Greta. Thanks, Sitoyo. I want to thank you for just spending this time with you and sharing your perspectives and your experience. But most of all, I want to thank you for the years that you've devoted to just growing mobile money, not only as a commercial solution, but as a tool for financial inclusion. I'm going to hand over to Matt now for the closing remarks. Thanks again to both of you.
Well, thank you, Max, Greta, and Sitoyo. That was absolutely brilliant and amazing. I must say, I really enjoyed that conversation. The growth and evolution of mobile money in coming years is just going to be staggering. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the close of this session. I hope you have enjoyed it as much as I have. Now, over the past hour, we have heard how the mobile money industry has grown after the pandemic, now processing $1 trillion in transaction annually. We have heard how the ecosystem has diversified and expanded globally over the past 10 years. We have looked at mobile money's contribution to sustainable economic development and its ability to drive financial inclusion. And we have seen progress made towards closing the gender gap in account ownership and usage, as Greta spoke about. But even though we have made incredible progress, there is still much more work to be done. We need to keep working to increase activity rates, reduce gender inequalities, and make sure that as it continues to grow across the world, mobile money remains relevant, meeting the diverse needs of customers, businesses, and society. When we look back and see how far mobile money has come, isn't it exciting to just imagine how much further it could go, where we would be in 10, 20, or maybe even 30 years from now? Imagine that. Now, as we close this session, I hope that you will take what you have heard here back into your workspaces and continue to dream, innovate, and work together to keep building this incredible ecosystem. Now, I would like to thank all of our guests and thank you to everyone who has joined us here today. The 10th State of the Industry Report on Mobile Money is available on the GSMA website, and you will find it as well on the link in the chat at the end of this session. So thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you and bye-bye.